Welcome to reLEADING podcast. I'm Kim Allen. This is where people come to learn about how to reLEAD, how to pause and pivot, which is always so important, and proceed with purpose, either in your professional life or in your personal life. And sometimes they go hand in hand. This episode is from my Fabulous Women series, and we have a fabulous guest. Today's episode is called My Power is My Resilience, where we are going to explore the leadership journeys of an HR executive. Today, we have a really special guest, Sara Dionne, who is the Vice President of Learning and Development and is the Chief Learning Officer at Comcast. Sara, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Kim. I'm excited to be here with you today.
No one's more excited than me. Okay. So in today's episode, it's going to be really interesting. We're going to be diving into Sara's leadership journey and her philosophy on resilience. And then she's going to be giving us some advice for aspiring HR leaders. I want to hear everything she has to say. Sara's one of the few HR leaders I've worked with, and she has a broad background spanning talent, change management, operations and analytics, HR, and learning. So let's get started. So this is the first segment. This is going to be about Sara's personal journey. Sara, can you tell us about your early career experiences? How did you get started in HR?
Yeah, I'd love to tell you I had some kind of master plan, but the reality is my journey in HR began in a little bit more of a unique way. I actually started at a financial services firm on the phones. So I was taking calls, at that time it was 10, 12 hours a day. But what happened is I quickly found myself doing the new hire training as my side hustle. And that's really where my experience in HR began. And, it was my earliest experience, but it is such a true full circle moment because now I'm leading learning at Comcast. I think I've always been a people person, probably how you and I have connected so well. But my willingness along the way to seize opportunities for growth, I think that really helped set me apart and help my career journey. Early on, one of my biggest challenges was understanding, what did I bring to the table? And how do I use that and then navigate the dynamics of a larger organization? Because I've always been in these really large organizations. I was always very eager. How can I learn more? How can I do more? And I think over time, I was able to figure out how I harness that enthusiasm and drive to build a career out of it.
That's really fascinating because I had to really think about I keep thinking that you've always been with Comcast, but actually you've not. So we're going to hear more about that. But that's really fascinating, Sara. Can you share some of your significant milestones in your career?
Yeah, I've been remarkably fortunate that, and you talked about that a bit in your setup, that I've had a very broad HR career. And I've had several key, what I say are pivotal moments. And one of the most significant was actually one of my bigger roles, I'll say, at Fidelity Investments when I was there. When I shifted into a product owner role, my product was around succession planning. So that's I still had that HR connection. And may not seem that exciting, right, to be kind of product owner. But this position for me was so memorable because for me, it was the first time that I had a role where I had the opportunity to work directly with clients outside of Fidelity, understand what their needs were, build a strategy based on those insights, and then ultimately deliver a product around that. So it was a really comprehensive experience for me that shaped my professional growth because I was able to see broadly how a business runs, how all the roles might intersect. And from there, I began leading people really in my next role. And I think each of those steps up in leadership is a different, key moment that defined my career. One of the ones that I think about and that I would, call pivotal was I was asked to lead adoption for a major HR transformation here at Comcast several years ago. It impacted every leader, every employee. And my role was to figure out how do we get them to embrace it, whether it was through knowledge, through change management, through communicating. And so it was another one of those real big impact roles. And if I think just more broadly, I've been really lucky to have a unique HR career because I've led talent acquisition along the journey. I've led talent management. I've led HR operations, data and analytics. I just mentioned adoption. Plus, I have been an HR business partner along that journey and now leading learning. So every one of those was a key pivotal moment for kind of my toolkit to give me a broader spectrum of both experience to develop myself, but also understanding of how an employee and how their journey at any organization works and where the leaders fit in and all of those interdynamics that are really so critical when you think about being in a large organization.
Right. So I heard 70,000 employees and I stopped. So excuse me, I have to read. Those are impressive milestones, Sara. What are some of the key lessons that you learned throughout your career?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably list so many, but the one that I think is most critical and at the same time I'm most proud of is building resilience. And it's because I truly believe it gives me power to be an effective leader, whether it's the leader of people or the leader of the strategy of the function. You know, every day brings new challenges. Frankly, this week itself has been no exception for me. And focusing on solutions rather than maybe the personal impact to myself of any of these challenges that we face has really empowered me to deliver for what the business needs at the end of the day, because that's what we're all here for.
Right.
And I think, you know, the other important lesson to me as a leader that builds on this is that, well, yes, my role is to deliver for the business. I have to do it by partnering with each member of my team, with peers, with stakeholders, right? At times with vendors, to be able to do that, right? So there's just so many dynamics involved. And it's crucial to remember that my role is not necessarily to meet the expectations that every single one of those individuals have in something we're doing, right? And that's where the resilience comes in, because that's not always easy, especially if you like, you know, you're a people pleaser. And this lesson for me has really allowed me to be more solution focused as I've grown my career while I approach the challenges that, you know, we're just always going to face it, you know, when you work.
Right. Well said. Okay. So the second part of this podcast with Sara is Sara's leadership philosophy. So how do you personally define resilience in the context of your role as an HR executive?
Right. This is one of those things that if you Google resilience, you get so many results. There's so many different points of view. And for me, resilience is really, I can take it all in, whether it's feedback, you know, an obstacle to delivery, something that I just wasn't expecting when I woke up in the morning, and that I cannot take it personally or let it impact me personally, but instead I can refocus and I can focus on finding a solution that moves whatever it is forward, even if it's just one step forward. And, you know, that sounds so simple. And let's be real, it's not. Sometimes I need a moment to take it personally first, right? We all do. Things are not as simple or as easy as any of us would like. But what I have found over the years as I've grown my career and really grown the resilience is I can move much more quickly from taking it personally to what is the solution. And I'm talking like within minutes at this point. And I believe it truly is like the resilience that is so important to me and for most of us, because every day is not going to be what we plan for. So you need to be able to pivot and be ready to do that and assume that that's just going to be part of the workday. And working through those unexpected moments, right? And leading a team forward and delivering for the business, that is resilience. It doesn't have to be a grand, big moment, right? I think resilience can be built in every one of those small day-to-day moments. And again, it doesn't mean that it's easy. I have my moments. We all have our moments, but it's a muscle you build over time. And I think we have to give ourselves more credit for doing it, because sometimes I don't know that we always realize how much resilience that we've each built along the way and said, you know what, I'm proud of myself for that. And I've moved forward on something maybe faster than I would have 10 years ago. And that's a good thing.
I love that, because moving forward is it's one of the hardest things I know that even I coach someone on, because they get stuck in the moment because they take it personally, when in essence, it's business. We're just busy. We're just busy. If anyone steals that word, I will come and I will find it. All right, Sara. So can you share some key moments where you built resistance? Oh, excuse me. Resilience, not resistance. What?
Well, I've built resistance over time too. But when it comes to resilience, I can. And one of the examples that always comes to me is a leadership example. And it was very early on in my career as being a people leader of a large group. And I had this experience with a superstar on my team. And the individual's making a big decision that I knew was in my gut not going to work out. And, I took the wrong approach. And I felt, I probably confronted them would be the way that I'd say it, and was honest and said, I don't think this is the right thing. This is a bad idea. If I had to put an emotion on it or behind it, I think I was probably angry. And although my gut feeling may have proved correct, I didn't feel good at all, because this was a really important person and an important relationship for me. And I had damaged that. And I knew this person, no matter where they went, had this incredible future.
Right.
And, it really taught me as a leader, the resilience here is, one, you have to let them at times, as Mel Robbins would say.
Right.
You got to let people on your team make their own decisions. I'm there to coach. I'm there to provide guidance. And ultimately, I have to support them with where they land, because it's not about me. And there's a resilience in that, in learning that I don't feel good about this, but I got to support it. I think it was such a growth moment for me when it comes to people leadership. And I would like to say that said individual who, may be out there, I'm so grateful to them, because they gave me that lesson. And over the decade, they also gave me enough grace that we are connected and we work together, and have conversations again. But when I look back on my, 25 or so years, that one always sticks out to me.
I like how you talked about let them. I'm seeing a million people on social media with let them tattooed on their forearm. But a lot of people, they didn't, if they didn't read the book, the second part of that is let them, and the second part is let me.
Correct. And that's where your resilience comes in, right? It gives you the power to say, this actually isn't about me, and that's okay. And this is going to be about them. And so I really see a lot of resilience in that type of concept, especially when you're leading people. Right.
So those are really powerful examples, Sara. Yeah. How has resilience helped you overcome significant challenges as a leader?
I face challenges, all the time. And I think one of them, just to bring another example to life, and Kim, this is where you and I really first started interacting, is I years ago had to take over a function for a peer who was out. And, I received feedback along the way, in our engagement collections about team wanted to have more fun. Okay. I'm a direct individual. I have a strong work ethic. I, probably learned some balance in this, because I don't think about let's just have fun all the time, but I took the feedback, right? And I continued to add new moments in of fun. And with your coaching, I realized that it's not my job to orchestrate fun necessarily, because somebody has asked for it, right? It goes back to that. I can't meet all expectations, but you need resilience to be able to get to that place and own it.
Absolutely.
And the experience really, for me, reinforced a balance, right, of work and engagement. But it was also one of those moments where I realized my answer is, this is all I can do. And face that and know that I have the resilience to work through that. And I remember the meeting that you actually helped me with, where we said, okay, this is coming to a head at this point. And you coached me to ask the question, do you think that I get paid so you have fun daily? And that was incredibly hard for me to do because I genuinely do like people who like me. That makes me happy, right? And I want to be able to support people. But it was such a vulnerable moment. But the resilience I needed to do that was just absolutely incredible. And I think coming back to kind of your question is, how do I, how has resilience helped me overcome things? That's a good moment because what it's taught me is how to pause.
Yes.
Let either just acknowledge there's a feeling or emotion happening to myself, but then quickly say to myself, okay, well, this maybe stinks, but what's next? And that mindset, that resilience can happen in a quick second. And that's the muscle you build. And it prevents me personally from dwelling on, whether an issue, a challenge, like whatever it is, so that I can, then pause and focus on what's the future forward. And being able to embed that as part of my daily thinking is for me the power of what resilience has given to me and why, for me, it's just one of my critical skills.
It is one of your critical skills. And I am honored that I was part of a memorable, pivotal moment for you, Sara. Okay.
Always.
So, all right. So we're on the third segment of this podcast. And now we're going to be hearing from Sara what advice she has for aspiring leaders. I'm all ears.
Yeah. So I'm going to move resilience to the side for a minute. My overall advice to people is say yes. I grew my career from day one by saying yes to something. And it was not necessarily ideal. It meant I was working far more than my regular job, but saying yes, you start to build your own skills, you build your network, and it allows you to start growing. And resilience does help you because it kind of gives you the power to move forward in those situations that you may not actually be comfortable with. I've said yes to a lot of things that I'm like, I don't know that I can do this, but that's where the real growth happens. And that resilience supports you. So for me, being open to saying yes is a huge one around growing your career. I think, the other one, and this is a hard one for me, is you have to learn to give yourself grace. If you can't give yourself grace during the tough moments, building resilience is going to be very challenging because you're actually always going to end up being in resistance to yourself. And the reality is we're all humans at the end of the day. Everyone we work with, every peer, teammate, stakeholder, leader is a human. And we're all going to make mistakes, lots of them, right? And we have to learn how to be okay with that and give ourselves the grace to be able to do that. And it's not easy. I had a moment just this week where I was like, oh, I am just not doing the right thing. Like I felt really like this is on me and I'm not doing this right. And I kept telling myself, no, you have to remember, give yourself grace. Sometimes I don't know how to do that. So it's a learning in progress, but I think it's really important to us. And, one of the things that I do kind of outside of work, because, in the setup, we talked a little bit about like personal leadership, is I've taken up the practice of meditation every morning. That is how I start my day because it has really helped me know how to pause in those moments to make sure that I've got the resilience I need or that I'm letting that emotion just fly away and then shifting. So for me personally, that is something that I have used because it has really helped me build that resilience along the way.
Sara, I'm so happy that you're talking about meditation. And I'm also so happy that you're talking about pausing because people will listen to you. People will emulate you. You've arrived. You're there. You're at the top. And, no one really talks about that. But what you're doing is giving permission to others to do that, number one. And also you're giving them a solution and a tool in the meditation part where they can pause, which is always important. Yeah. So that's great advice. So Sara, what words of encouragement would you give to those who are just starting their leadership journey?
Yeah, one, I'd say it is a journey. Journeys don't necessarily end, right? They can go on for decades. And in my journey, every single time I was uncomfortable, I learned something. Might take you a minute to realize it on the other side sometimes to bring that clarity. But when I look back, I can't think of a single time I didn't take something away or some kind of lesson from those uncomfortable moments. So identify them when you're feeling it, and it's okay to feel it, but also say, all right, this is just one of those uncomfortable moments. It's going to pass and I'm going to learn something from it. And taking that moment to just put language around it gives yourself a little bit of space. Again, that's that resilience that you're building that empowers you to say, now what? What did I learn? Or what do I want to do with that? Or what's next?
Right.
So for me, that is really kind of one of those, when you're uncomfortable, just note it and note what that means for you, because you will be on the other side of it, usually very quickly.
Right. Well, Sara, I just know that a lot of people have reached out to me excited that this podcast was even happening, and especially because of you.
Thank you.
My Fabulous Woman series, and you're my fabulous guest. So I just wanted to thank you for sharing your incredible journey with us today. And just to recap what we learned, because actually this was such a huge, this is like a little mini masterclass from Sara Dionne. But Sara discussed the importance of resilience, the key moments that were in her career that she shared with us, the valuable advice for aspiring leaders. And I continue to learn from you. Even after all these years, I will always be a student of yours. I'm not ending yet, but I do want to say that if you want to connect with Sara, make sure that you look for her on LinkedIn and follow her work on Comcast. And this, I'm not finished, but this YouTube channel lives on my, this podcast lives on my YouTube channel. And you're always going to be able to watch that and subscribe, and also to leave a review. So as I always end my podcast, I remind everyone that life is short, but careers are shorter. So if you want to do it right, whatever it is that you do, whether it's personally or professionally, be effective. When you're effective in what you do, you win, always. And now we're also adding Sara's advice to that, to stay resilient. So thank you again, Sara. It's been a pleasure seeing you and spending some time with you. And I thank everyone for tuning into this episode of reLEADING and learning from Sara Dionne how power is her resilience. So we will see everyone next time. Thank you, Sara.
Thanks so much, Kim. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Take care. Thanks. Bye.